Welcome to the Atlanta Real Estate Podcast, the show where we interview the key players behind the Atlanta housing market. We talk to top producing real estate agents, mortgage lenders, investors, builders, and everyone in between to share the secrets of their success and learn more about their stories. I am your host, Mike Lacey. I am a top producing agent with Sotheby's International Realty and also a real estate investor in the Metro Atlanta area. In today's episode, we have Stephen Jones of Lightbox Homes, and he is truly an incredible guest. Oh my gosh, guys. This is a legit investor. He has been doing flips for 7-8 years now. He owns multiple rental properties. Him and his wife have a pretty incredible operation that they run when it comes to real estate investing. So if you have any interest in how to build wealth through real estate and how to get started investing in real estate, you are going to absolutely love today's episode. One of the things that I was most surprised to learn about Stephen is that he has spent over $30,000 just on courses learning how to invest in real estate. And you guys are going to get the key nuggets and takeaways that he has learned both from that education and from his experience through doing these flips and buying rental properties. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely stay tuned. I think you are going to absolutely love today's episode. There are so many little tidbits of information that are definitely going to help you out in your journey. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Stephen Jones with Lightbox Homes.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited to share your story, partially because I'm going to learn. We've met through, potential real estate transactions, but I'm very curious to learn more about your business, what you've done with Atlanta real estate, and just kind of hear more about your story. So take us back to the very beginning.
Wow. Okay. So I grew up here in the Atlanta area. I went to Decatur High School and graduated class of 98, went to UGA after that, studied magazine journalism.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Finally a national championship in 21. Very emotional moment for me because I used to be the chief photographer for the Red and Black, which is their award-winning newspaper. And every weekend I'd have a sideline pass. And I still remember those. They were my glory days. I loved them.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. If only they had won a national championship in 2002, but never mind. Anyway, after that, I went to work for the Chattanooga Times Free Press as a photojournalist. I hiked the Appalachian Trail after that, and then began working for Gannett at the Hattiesburg American for a couple of years. Found that the newspaper business really wasn't my cup of tea, so I took a year in Korea to sort of find myself. I taught English as a second language. I saved up a bunch of money to open a photo studio back here in Atlanta when I returned. And I started shooting weddings. I met my wife, Lena. She's from Venezuela. And she came on and started assisting me. And we quickly discovered that weddings weren't the way to go. We changed to a life cycle business, and we photographed maternity, babies, family, children, and I did corporate work as well. That business was very successful up until about 2014-15 when we started to notice the digital revolution impinging on our ability to acquire new clients. So we started looking around. Lena has a background in graphic design and industrial design, and she was, your stereotypical HGTV watcher, so every night we'd be sitting there watching Flip or Flop or what have you. And she discovered the Fortune Builders program and got us into it in 2015. We paid about $25,000 for that program, but it taught us everything. And many of the people I met in that program are still with me today. I don't know if you know Malhar Bhagat, M2 Rest, Danielle Jasmine, his wife. They're two of the people we look up to. He was my full immersion coach. And I remember the first house he ever took me to on Memorial Drive to, estimate a rehab. Just wonderful time. But we bought our first flip in the fall of that year, and we sold it for about a $65,000 profit in spring of the next year, and we were off to the races at that point. Over time, actually pretty quickly, we both discovered our positions in the business. I really enjoy creative output, so marketing was more my thing, and acquisitions. And Lena really has a good touch running a crew, and her crew loves her. And so she learned how to project manage from her GC and became our project manager. And over the years, that's the those are the two sides of the businesses that we run. So right now, I think we've completed around 50 flips, and we got 2 more in our back pocket right now. We have also opened a consumer side, so we do kitchens, baths, basement finishes. We really like the full house renovation, though, more than anything else. But we mostly do that to kind of make up for where the market is going currently.
Awesome. That's so good. Yeah. So great sort of 30,000 foot view of sort of your trajectory, which included some interesting pivots along the way.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're adaptable, right? When you see the writing on the wall that something's no longer working, it's like, okay, time to try something next. I want to focus in a bit on when you took that course and decided to make this leap, because I mean, that's no joke. Like, for anyone that's listening, imagine investing $25,000 in a course. Like, the level of faith that you have to have that that's going to work out is quite high. Especially today, there's so many more courses out there, and it's become such a bigger industry. Talk to me a little bit, sort of the mentality there. Were you guys just all in at that point? Like, what were you thinking when you were going into that course and then even going into your first flip?
Well, I'd really like to credit Lena. She has much more of an investor mindset than I do. And at that time, it was much more so. Her father is like my hero. He has a mindset that is just, it's something to be envied. I mean, the guy just has an eye for opportunity. He's unafraid to throw money at good investments. He's unafraid to lose it sometimes. And she called him up and she's like, hey, I want to get into this. Steven's kind of scared. He's not sure where we're going to come up with the money. Could you help? And he's like, yeah, no problem. That sounds like a great idea. And he gave us the money to seed the business and to buy our first house. And it really, like, it set me back on my heels, you know, because I came from sort of, you know, you ever read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Oh, yeah.
I love my father. He's a hero to me as well in many ways, but he was my poor dad.
According to Robert Kiyosaki, at least.
Exactly.
His words,
in the
not yours,
Kiyosaki,
right?
in the Kiyosaki world, he was the guy who was like, go to college, get a degree, get paid for your time. And I did that, and I discovered they didn't want to pay me very much for my time or my expertise behind the camera. And that's where I got lost originally, and I had to go to Korea and kind of figure things out, because I was like, all the people in this business are in their 60s making 30 grand a year with bad knees and hips. This is not a good idea. But it was really not until I met my wife that I began to understand the investor mindset, the growth mindset. And that first foray into Fortune Builders was my baptism. I remember Lena cornered me in a parking garage, and she's like, you're going to do this. You are going to do this. You're going to put your camera down. In 2 years, you're not going to have that camera in your hands anymore. You're going to do this. And she was right.
I love that. That's amazing. So were you still doing photography while trying to get the flipping business going? Or was it like a full stop, rip the Band-Aid off, we're flipping, we're all in?
Well, we did year-long packages for people where we photographed maternity, infant, 6 months, and a year. And so we still owed people packages. We had just begun a few when we got into Fortune Builders. So we had to finish that. And my corporate clients loved me. I worked for Mercer University for years as their primary here in Atlanta. And they were very sad to see me go. So yeah, we had to kind of work our way out of that. But that was good. I needed that transition to fully understand the business, to make mistakes, and to kind of like grow into our positions in the company.
When her father gave you that money, do you think you were more scared or less scared at that point than if you had paid it yourself?
I would say, you know, I would say I was less scared because Linhart was so not scared. You know, it's sort of like that leader mentality. When somebody's like, no, I believe in you. You can do this. You start to ask that of yourself. You start to say, yeah, maybe I can. Right. And that really inspired me. I was scared, sure, because where was real estate, you know, in 2015? It was just starting to crawl out from under the rock it had been squashed under in 2008. So I was like, man, what's going to happen? You know, what is real estate still a good investment? But no, he really believed in it. So I began to believe in it too.
I love that. That's incredible. So let's talk about the first flip. What was it? Where was it? Do you remember any of the numbers?
Oh, yeah, of course. It was on Lytle Avenue in Ormwood Park. It was a brick bungalow, about 1,250 square feet on a basement that really wasn't a basement. It was sort of a mix between a basement and a crawl. And we bought it for $165. I remember we found it on Zillow. We were just driving for dollars, and Lena was just on Zillow hunting. And she's like, look, these people lowered the price on this house from $260 to $230. And I was like, that's a pretty steep drop. So we gave the agent a call, and she said it's inherited, and the lady wants to move to Savannah, and she wants to let it go quick. And I was like, okay, great. Could we see 200? And she was like, yeah, I think that could work. We put it under contract. We got it inspected. And Lena's like, we need to be at 165 after going through our coach with Fortune Builders and going through their, assessment form that you use. And we negotiated it down to 165 based upon that inspection.
Wow. Was there anything in particular on that inspection that sort of gave you that leverage, or did you just say, hey, look, in order for us to move forward, this is the number we got to be at?
Basically that. Basically, we said, this is what makes sense for the math, and they went for it.
That's wild. I mean, if they were at 260 not long before that and closed at 165, to have a $100,000 discount at that price point is, do you still put deals together like that today, or?
You'd be surprised. Actually, I have one under contract like that. It's a listed property, and I don't know why, but nobody had bothered to offer this guy what I offered. And maybe it was just because it had been on the market so long, but he accepted. So
amazing.
I know.
Let's talk more about that. I think for people that are getting into real estate just now, just starting out, or maybe even somewhat newer to the game, one of the hardest things I think the past few years has been finding the deals. Do you buy most of your stuff off market or on market? Is it a mix?
A mix. I find that actually MLS deals can work. The key is follow-up. And being very, authentic and open about the numbers that you're offering and why. You're not going to convince anybody to take less, right? You just have to be the person they trust the most to close. So that's basically how I go at it. And yeah, it's a lot of offers that don't get accepted, but you just got to be prepared for that and keep following up.
Do you have a rough idea of how many offers it takes for you to close a deal, what that ratio is?
A lot of my acquisitions focuses on relationships. So it's actually not very many deals that I don't close on. Because when somebody comes to me, it's because they already know that this seller is willing to take X. And they come to me because they know I'll close. So sometimes we have to negotiate it down a little bit, but one way or another, I close on a lot of those deals. I just don't have a ton of leads coming in, right? Mm-hmm. I do some MLS prospecting. I do a little web prospecting, and I do a lot of networking. And that's it. Just making sure people in my network know my value, knowing that I will close on the number that I give them. And it's just, at that point, it's up to them.
That's a great lesson. People in the real estate agent space talk about how relationships are everything, but it's really all of real estate. I don't care if you're a home inspector, if you're a lender, if you're an appraiser. Well, they might get stuff handed to them. But for most people, it's relationships are super important, and your reputation is very, very important in this space. So going back to the first flip, what was the result? You got it for 165. Do you remember what you put into it, what you sold it for?
We did a full gut renovation. All drywall, all systems replaced, roof, everything for $85,000.
Wow.
I know. This is 2015-16, mind you. Mm-hmm. But then we sold it for $380.
Wow.
With, Ben McKinsey was our listing agent. I don't know if you know Ben at the time. Did a great job. But after that, Lena's like, you're getting their license.
She saw the settlement statement and how much you were paying Ben.
Yeah, that was my mistake. So she sent me up here to Sandy Springs to get my license in 2016.
Okay, so now you're licensed and you're representing yourself, and that helps not only on the sell side, but is also extra commissions when you go to buy, right?
Well, believe it or not, I try to help out my fellow agent, if there's an agent involved, by not taking a commission when I buy.
Interesting.
Yeah, the company comes first, and I know that I'll make money when I sell the property. We are actually modifying that now to help agents that bring me deals also get to relist the property once it's renovated, and I just take a small portion of that commission because I realize that in order to make those relationships stronger with agents, that would be helpful.
That's really good.
to keep them, coming back and to keep deals in their hands as well,
I can even speak to that as someone who's a full-time realtor, and that's what I do. I mean, I get hit up a couple times a week with a DM or a text or a call. Hey, I'm looking for deals in your area. Let me know. So it's like if I had someone that I wanted to reach out to, there's 100 people I could call, text, send it to. But that's such a good way for you to differentiate yourself and say, look, not only will I close on it, so you can count on me in that regard, but you can list it on the back end for, we'll work out some commission structure. All of a sudden, you are now standing out from the crowd from the other 99 people that are trying to blow me up looking for deals.
It's also a good negotiating tool, because once an agent realizes that they're on my team, we can talk about what that house could sell for once it's fully renovated. I send them our portfolio and show them the kind of job that we do, so they know that we're not just some corner cutting, fly-by-nighter. And they say to me, Stephen, I think I could get you X on that house. And I'm like, great. Let me back out from that, what I know I'm going to spend to renovate it to that level, the money I want to make on the deal, and that'll give me a number. And whether your seller takes it right now or not is not important. You now know what my number is. So if they get there, you know that I'll close on that number.
That's really, really good. So wrapping up that first deal, say it again, you sold for $380, you bought at $165 and you put $85 into it.
Yep.
So you were all in for $250.
Yep.
So outside of commissions, there was about $130 in profit. Is it fair to say you walked away with about $100,000 on that?
That's about right. Yeah.
Wow. And you were like, okay, I'm really done with photography now.
Oh, super done. I mean, that was half of our total gross receipts in the photography business.
Wow.
With one house. Yeah. I mean, changed everything for me.
And was that kind of the norm going forward for the next year or two? Or did you have a little beginner's luck on that deal?
Total beginner's luck. And I should have stayed in Norwood Park. No, we picked up I want to say Net Worth deal, or was it New Western? One of those two. Who's Tony? What's his last name? I can't remember, but we picked up a deal out in Lawrenceville, a 2013 build that had been partially burnt, and we rebuilt that. And we only made about 35 on that deal, and it was a lot of driving. So the next deal we sort of kicked our own butts on, and that was good though. One of the things that they teach in Fortune Builders is learn from your mistakes, and it won't be a mistake anymore.
Yeah. Any sort of real estate investing, I'm more of like a buy and hold guy, multifamily, so slightly different space. And there are a million ways to make money in real estate. And there's a lot of good resources out there to learn that information. But I spent a year kind of studying this stuff on my own, trying to learn it. And even then I had 60%, 70% of what I needed to know. And I was never going to get that remaining bit until I just did it.
Yes.
And got the experience firsthand.
Yes. Take massive action.
Yeah, and you definitely did. So you actually touched on something I wanted to ask you about, which is, do you try to do your flips in certain areas, certain parts of Atlanta?
We really like the more established in-town neighborhoods. So East Atlanta is our favorite. We've done a handful of flips there. We love that neighborhood. But we also like Northeast Atlanta because they're basically ranch houses with a basement. And we can finish that basement into another bedroom and a full bath. And you can take a 3-2 to a 4-3 without doing an addition, which makes it faster. So we really like to work in my own home neighborhood near North Lake Mall, Tucker, Lakeside High School. It's our favorite market.
That makes a ton of sense. And is that primarily driven by the fact that it's close to you and you can get to the projects quickly? Or is some of that you like those markets and are a bigger believer in the values there?
Both. We've taken deals as far away as Hiram or Lawrenceville. And at a certain point, I think it was around 2019, my wife was like, no more of that, because we're losing a lot of efficiency making all those drives. So she wants me to keep our acquisitions pretty tight to where we live if possible. And that's another reason why we got into the consumer business, because we realized a lot of people right now want to stay in their existing home and just fix up their existing home instead of sell their home with a 3% mortgage and buy another with a 6% mortgage, which doesn't make sense for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I can totally see that. Did that correspond with a harder market to flip in? Do you feel like it has been harder to do flips from, Q3, Q4 of 2022?
Well, yeah, the margins are a lot tighter. And that's another reason I like those ranches is they have enough space that if you need the square feet to get to that higher level of ARV, you probably have it. So yeah, if you're looking in town, because we've done some pop tops in town as well, where you take like a 900 or 1,000 square foot house and you double the square footage on it by doing a second level. That's getting a lot harder to make work.
Just economically,
yes.
The money.
There's a lot of competition in town right now, which is pushing up the prices of the acquisitions faster than it's pushing up the prices of the retail sale.
Yeah, I worked with a couple flippers in 2020 and 2021 as their agent. And one thing that was fascinating is if you were buying deals on the market, unless you had some super secret off market deal that no one else knew about, if you were competing with other flippers, you had to pay top dollar to get the deal. And people were literally buying at a price to where there was no profit margin. And they're really just banking on the rapid appreciation. And for a while it worked. It's like they would do the project in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and the market was going up so fast that they would still make 40, 50K on the deal, but it was just appreciation. They literally were buying with no profit margin built in. What was your strategy during that time?
We were very meat and potatoes. We were doing good renovations. We wanted deep margins for that reason, because we didn't want anybody to call us after the closing. And if you cut corners, if you kind of do a half job, people are going to call you when something goes wrong, because they kind of view you that way. Like, oh, this guy made money off of me. Well, now my sink is leaking. I'm going to call him. And I'm like, we don't want that, right? So we never bought that way. We never bought with appreciation as our profit margin. We always tried to buy at that day's market. What was selling right then was what we expected to sell the house for. Now, over that period of time, appreciation constituted a lot of the additional profit that we had on a deal, right? But we let a lot of deals go because it did not work in that day's market, And what's funny to really realize is that if I had just bought them in 16, 17, 18 and just did nothing to them, I could have wholesaled them now, having done nothing for a lot. But of course, hindsight is 2020, right? So,
well, the other thing I'd wonder with that is once you get into the business, you start to understand cash flow. And, we are talking about deals that take hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy. Now, that's not always your money. There's hard money loans, there's private investors, there's things like that. But even with the first few deals you did, if that cash had been locked up in that deal for 6 years, would that not have inhibited your growth of doing other deals?
It might have. I mean, most people in my circle would say, well, just go find more money.
Yeah.
They just say, hey, that's a mindset problem. Just go find more money. And in a way, they would be correct. However, the money that we had in those deals was very short-term money. Those investors wanted it turned around within a year. And so I had not reached out to them and said, hey, here's my plan. Sit on this. I'll split the profit with you if you'll let me sit on it 2-3 years. But I knew other people that were doing that at the time. So it's not like it wasn't exposed to me. But I think once you get into a groove, it's hard to kind of take a risk and jump out of that, right? And we were sort of forced out of that groove when COVID hit. Maybe you were too, I don't know, but we liquidated a lot of our portfolio, a lot of our inventory, when COVID hit, and we should not have done that.
When you say liquidated your inventory, were these rental properties that you were holding on to?
No.
Or were they uncompleted flips?
No, they were leads mostly. Deals under contract.
Uh-huh.
And I just wholesaled them.
I got you.
Instead of, because we're not wholesalers. As a general rule, that's not our business model. Mm-hmm. Our core competency is renovating.
Yeah, quick aside, just in case anyone doesn't know what wholesaling is, basically you get a property under contract and it's a good deal, right? Stephen, when you're buying homes, you say, okay, I got this under contract at the right price. If I renovate it and turn around and sell it, I can make a profit on this. Well, the wholesaler sort of takes a shortcut and says, I'm just going to give the contract to someone else and they'll pay me a fee. It can be $5,000, $10,000. It can be pretty high fees sometimes depending on how sweet the deal is, but you have to leave meat on the bone for the next person so that they can make a profit when they actually do the renovation and sell it and all that. So what made you decide to wholesale those deals? Were you just worried about what was going to happen with the market and you wanted the quick guaranteed profit?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Now, as far as rentals go, have you ever owned any rentals? Do you have any desire to build a portfolio as well?
Yeah, if you ask me what my greatest regret is over the last 8 years, it would be not having held more of the properties that we short-term flipped. That's my greatest regret.
I feel like a lot of flippers say that. They look at how much money they made, but then they'll see a home that they sold back in 2017 and they're like, it's worth what now?
Yeah, no, and cash flow. I mean, for me, a rental property is that future appreciation. That's why you buy them. I don't believe in passive income. We own I think it's 8 doors, but none of it is passive. I mean, some of them are short-term rentals, some of them are mid-term rentals, some of them are long-term rentals. All of them have challenges, but I'm holding them long-term for that appreciation,
Yeah, totally. Let's touch on that real quick. You were mentioning short versus medium versus long-term rental, and I think this is a very in vogue conversation in the investing space. Medium-term rental is kind of the hot new thing with traveling nurses or families that have been displaced for insurance claims, things like that. Do you have a particular strategy that you have more of an affinity towards right now?
Well, we are just beginning to get into the midterm rentals. We took a course from a woman named Rachel Gainsborough, Dr. Rachel Gainsborough. I think it's Short-Term Gyms is her business. And she taught us basically the business of reaching out to insurance companies who are looking for homes for people that have been displaced by natural disasters. So a tree falls on somebody's house, they need a place to live for 6 months, and they have the coverage on their home insurance policy, which is coverage D, by the way. The insurance company hires another company, to find housing for that family while their home is being repaired. And we're talking 2 to 3 times long-term rent or better during that period of time. Now, they have to be furnished, but we've also been noticing a trend towards regulation on short-term rentals. So the 3 short-term rental doors that we're running right now, we are beginning to transition to midterm rentals to avoid regulation and licensing and all the, stuff that goes with it.
Yeah, very, very smart. Every regulation they don't regulate the company Airbnb, right? There's not a new law that's passed that says you can't put your home on Airbnb.com. Yeah. Instead, they'll say, hey, if you have someone staying in your home for less than 30 days that meets these whatever, here's the rules that you have to follow. So if that's the letter of the law, you can say, great, I'll have them stay for 31 days or 32, whatever it is, to not fall within that category, right?
Right. But then you also get into lease law, in Georgia, and you have to deal with the fact that they have certain rights once they've stayed longer than 30 days. So you have to keep that in account as well. But yeah, I mean, you look at the city of Atlanta and the restrictions that they passed. They haven't been enforced, but they did pass. In full disclosure, I'm a member of the Atlanta Metro Area Short-Term Rentals Association, also known as AMSTRA. And we are working right now with the city to try and craft legislation that would more professionalize short-term rentals versus straight up ban them or create roadblocks that are arbitrary.
Yeah, the regulations that were passed were quite strict. Yes. I mean, you probably know better than me, but from what I remember is if you're in this is city of Atlanta, by the way, yeah. You can't have more than 2 Airbnbs, flat out, full stop. One of them has to be your primary residence. You need to pay for some sort of fees and licensing. I mean, it's very, very strict. It's close to a full ban.
And very arbitrary too, and they've gotten worse too. They've looked at changing it, but their new rules are like, well, you can't have 2 Airbnbs within 2,000 feet of each other. And it's like, how on earth are you going to enforce this?
Someone out there with a tape measure.
Exactly. So we're working with the city. AMSTRA is working with the city to try and change it to a professional certification sort of regimen. Which would help the neighborhoods keep, responsible Airbnb holders in the neighborhoods without straight banning it. But I mean, look at Dallas.
Mm-hmm. They just banned it recently, right?
Completely banned it.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that hate Airbnb.
Yeah.
They think that they think it's worse than hotels and there's all that, but they think it's, aiding the affordability issues because more properties are being used for that. There, you hear about the parties and all the just transient people coming in and out and how it can cause problems. So I get it. There's a story to both sides. So, I want to go back to flipping though a little bit because I know that that's where you have so much experience having flipped over 50 homes.
Yep.
So first one went great. What's the worst flip you've ever done? Either financially or headaches or...
Well, I think the worst one we did was in Eastlake on Arbor Avenue. And this was a little shotgun house from like 1919 or something like that. And I remember it because when Lena and I walked in it after I bought it, she got attacked by fleas because there were some animals or something living under the house. And she had like her legs covered in fleas. Oh, no. I know, man. It was horrible. And we had to put so much more money into that house than we thought. We walked away, I think, with like maybe 24 grand, which if we had to pay a GC, we'd be much farther in the red. So that was a bad deal.
That's pretty good though. If your worst deal was still profitable, I mean, plenty of flippers have lost money on deals, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, who gets paid for their mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Totally. Any other particularly interesting stories that stand out or deals that you remember that might have been big learning moments or just a crazy story?
I had a guy bring to me a list of properties held by a charity. They had been gifted these properties as tax deeds, and they were slowly losing them because they themselves didn't have the cash to pay the taxes every year on the tax deeds. And so he gave me the list, and I looked through it, and I found a couple properties that I was interested in, and I made a deal. If you'll sell me these properties at this price, I will invest in the foreclosure process and the quiet title process. And they said yes, we got it done, and I picked up a few properties, including a 4.25 acre lot in the city of Atlanta.
Wow, that's a huge piece of land in the city. It's hard to find like a half acre lot in Atlanta.
I know, and completely undeveloped. I mean, we're talking little trees the diameter of my arm everywhere. In fact, it had not changed hands so often, or it had been so long since it had changed hands that they didn't even have a legal description for it. I had to pay $14,000 for a survey because they had to survey literally every single property that bordered it in order to create the legal description.
Wow.
So that we could close.
Yeah, as a quick aside, for anyone that doesn't know what a legal description is, I found this fascinating when I was getting my license. So like typically when you think of a home, you think of the address, right? Really the mailing address, right? I live at 123 Main Street. Well, new addresses are created all the time with new construction, and addresses change, street names change. And so legally, when you're transacting real estate, when you're buying or selling real estate, they don't identify it just off the street address. There is a legal description, and it's archaic. Like it depends on which one you're looking at, but one of the methods for highlighting the legal bounds of a property is they're like, start here, walk 80 steps this way. It's pretty archaic, and it's funny to read them. But to pay $14,000 just to have a legal description is nuts. Typically, you can find that for free.
Yeah, and most surveyors were like, heck no, I'm not doing that, man. That's in the jungle down there, man. There's so many trees and bushes and creeks and things I got to get through. It's just too much work. But I do have to hand it. That was Survey Land Express, actually, who did that. And he put it together, and we closed on it. That was a great deal. I bought that land all told for under $100,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's $25,000 an acre. You probably can't even find that like an hour outside of the city these days, I feel like.
Right. Well, it is a gamble. I don't know what's on it. I did not get a soil test done. So I'm assuming it's developable, if that's a word. But I mean, that's the thing about land to me. If you're going to buy land, it literally needs to be dirt cheap because it's a bigger risk than anything else. You can't monetize it easily. You have to develop it. And if it's that big, it's not like putting a house on it. It's putting 20 houses on it. That's an order of magnitude bigger investment and bigger skill set than actually I even have. So this piece of land represents my next step as a real estate investor. And I'm working on it right now, working with the city, talking to community stakeholders, trying to wrap my mind around what it's going to take to develop this land, because I've never done a project of this size before. But that excites me.
I love that. That's how you learn, right? As you keep pushing outside your comfort zone. I get people that ask me that sometimes on social media. They're like, what do you think about buying land and holding on to it? And obviously you can make money doing it. Me personally, I love buy and hold investing because it helps you make money in 4 ways, right? You get cash flow from the property if it's profitable. You get appreciation from it going up in value. You get loan pay down where your tenants are paying off the debt for you, and you get tax benefits. With land, it's a much bigger gamble. Like you said, it might not be producing income. The lending on land is very different for someone that's buying it in a more traditional way. Right. Your deal was pretty unique. So it's a very different way of going about it. That being said, the right land deal, you can make millions of dollars if its highest and best use is that profitable.
Precisely.
So are you thinking that you'll sell it to a developer and let them do the rest, or do you think you might develop it yourself?
I'm not sure yet, actually. Like I said, I'm talking to various people about it. I do have a number of developers who've reached out to me and have started just giving me information, trying to build a relationship with me, which I have a lot of respect for. But I want to understand the land and what's possible with it before I make that decision. Another deal I wanted to discuss really quick that I'm very proud of was a simpler pop-top deal that I did in Decatur in 300-3-2, where the seller approached me when I was flipping the house next door, said he wanted to sell the house, and that was great. But when my title attorney came back to me, she said, he doesn't own the house, his mother does. I'm like, oh, really? And she's dead. And she's been dead for a number of years.
Wow.
And I talked to the seller, and he's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. And I was like, well, do you have the cash to go through probate and move title into your name? And he's like, no. So once again, I paid for the seller to go through probate, of course, with a contract protecting me. Mm-hmm. And COVID hit, and my seller died of COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Right at the end, right as we were about to get out of the courts, right in 2021, we were about to get out of the courts, he passed away.
Oh no.
I know. And it was very sad. His son didn't quite know what to do, but to his credit, he kept his father's word and they sold the house to me.
Wow.
And in return, I helped the son file the necessary documents to get reimbursed by the government for his father's funeral expenses.
Oh, wow.
I got that guy about $5,000 from the government for those funeral expenses. And I love that. You know, I love when I can help people, you know, when I can put together a deal that helps them achieve what they want to achieve and helps me achieve what I want to achieve. And I feel like as you move forward in this market and as deals become harder and harder to get, you know, that kind of commitment to your sellers is what will bring deals to the closing table.
Absolutely, right. And I think that's especially true in the wholesaling space because a lot of the people that I find that do that are looking for a quick buck, in it for themselves, just want to make money. And then they're like, oh, I can't find a deal. And it's like, well, people might not have that level of trust to want to work with you. But when you legitimately approach them saying, hey, I want to help you out, of course, I'm going to make a profit. I'm doing this for my own reasons as well, too. But there truly are win-win situations that you can create where everyone walks away feeling good.
Yeah. And you don't have to hide those things. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, God, I'm making money. What if they know I'm making money? It's like, don't worry about that. Solve their problem and they'll allow you to make money. I mean, that's it.
Totally. I want to touch on one more thing before we wrap up. So one of the ways in which we first met is I helped someone sell a house. You were looking at a lot next to it and talking about exchanging some of the land, and it became very interesting. And then another thing you had looked at doing with that same home was potentially purchasing it subject to the existing loan. And I don't know how deep we want to go into creative financing, but it is a topic that is on people's minds these days. Rates have gone from 3 to 7%. And subject to is a form of buying a home where you just basically take on the existing mortgage. So if you have a seller with a 3% interest rate and they want to get rid of the home, if there's a way for the buyer to just assume that rate, it could be another example of a win-win. Now, my question is, I hear everyone talking about it. Have you done any subject to deals? Do you think it's as feasible as people are making it seem? Thoughts?
Yeah, man, subject to. I love subject to, and I got into it about, a couple years back. I joined Pace Morby's program as well and learned everything that he had to teach about it. I think it's brilliant. And I still keep it as a tool in my tool belt to this day. In fact, yesterday I placed an offer on a house that was subject to existing financing, because it does allow you to solve a seller's problem if that problem is related to price. You know, if they won't come down off of that number no matter what, subject to and owner financing, creative financing, allows you to pay them what they want for the house. It's all based on the cash flow, and that's really the trick. So I will say, as a caveat, many of the deals that I've tried to pull down this way have not worked out for that reason. It's just rent minus all the expenses, minus your leverage, gives you the cash flow, and sometimes there's just not enough.
Even at that lower rate that you're getting?
Yeah, I find the place that the obstacle that I come up against the most is my own cash. Lynn Hart, you know, who helped us start the business, who gave us the seed money, also found us most of our investors. And they give us money at about 8%, which is pretty good as far as like short-term investment money.
10 to 12%, yeah.
Yeah, and 100% value as well. So, and I pretty much have checkbook control over that. But the problem is 8% of, say, $150,000 is still about $1,000 a month in interest only, right? So if you have a deal like I had yesterday where you could rent it for $2,600, the seller will take $1,000 a month principal. I mean, zero interest on that. But then they want $150,000 down. Oh man, now with taxes and maintenance and vacancy, I'm paying $3,500 a month for a property that I can rent for $2,600 a month. It doesn't work. So I'm still trying to get my subject to, or my creative financing merit badge, if you will. Still working at it.
I love that. One last question before we go to our final four. Are there any particular areas of Atlanta that you're particularly excited about or bullish on that you would love to own property in?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
What would you say are some, like, your top five, maybe?
Oh, well, my first is definitely where the GM plant is being turned into Assembly Studios, NBC Universal, right there on I-285 at Doraville. For decades and decades and decades, since I was a little kid, various developers have come in saying, I'm going to redevelop that closed auto plant into this or that, and none of them have come through. Finally, this studio company is coming in, and they are working on it even as we speak, turning it into a major movie studio that will be rented out long-term by NBC Universal. And so the Doraville area, Oak Cliff, my neighborhood, a little bit further down on 85, Chamblee, these areas are all on fire for that reason. And we actually just sold a flip in Chamblee for top dollar very fast, because people want to live in that neighborhood really bad. There's like zero inventory. So that area right there where 85 and 285 cross, very strong. Another area that kind of always seems to surprise me is East Atlanta. Once again, like I said, this is one of my favorite neighborhoods. It's very strong. Houses have a lot of character. It's close to the Beltline, you know, so all of those factors combine to make a very stable and strong market there. I was bullish on the Quarry Park area, Grove Park, and then Microsoft pulled out.
What's the latest with that? Have they said if they're going to, like, did they pause it? I don't think they've fully, like, shut it down, right?
My read was they fully pulled out.
Really?
Yeah. I haven't followed up since then. But there was also that moratorium on additions and new construction in Grove Park. That's very challenging as well. The city of Atlanta tends to be pretty challenging for that reason. Generally, the politicians are kind of at loggerheads with the investment community, the short-term rental ordinance being the best example of that, you know. And I can understand the city's point. Like you said, they don't want to see all their long-term rental inventory turned into short-term rentals, right? So that's understandable. The Stone Mountain market continues to impress me. It's one of the few areas that are still relatively close into town where you can buy a decent house for under $400,000. So that market's very strong, and we did a great flip there last year on Jason Court. We bought for 144, we put about 85, and we sold for, I think it was like 380. So that was a great deal. And it surprised me because those neighborhoods have always been very sleepy in my experience.
I think that, and I think that about Mableton. Like if you kind of just work your way around 285, right? On the north side, it's very expensive. Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Smyrna's gotten very expensive. East Cobb, Tucker is, not cheap. Right. But I feel like Mableton and Stone Mountain stick out as like they're pretty accessible and much lower priced than some of those other neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's true. So you can create those deals that have a lot more buyers interested in picking them up. In my neighborhood, ARV is closer to like 600 to 900. So you really have to do an amazing job on those houses and, higher level of finishes and layout in order to get those numbers and attract those buyers. But my question actually is, the next market that really interests me are the exurbs. Do you know Carson Olinger? Runs the North Lake RIA, and he buys in like Forsyth, Hall, Northern Gwinnett County. And yeah, you can still find values out there, sub 300, sub 200 in some cases. And one of the most vexing problems that I face as a real estate investor is buying rental properties in town that cash flow because the prices have held up. And, rates are also pretty high. I think they're still in the 7s for investment real estate. And 3 points, that's hardcore rates. I mean, it's just hard to cash flow, which is why you also see MTRs and STRs exploding in town because people need to find a way to cash flow those properties. But I think you can still pick up traditional long-term rentals in these exurban counties. Carson has told me this repeatedly, that's where he searches for properties for that reason. And I think as the in-town neighborhoods become more and more expensive, you're going to see a second wave of people moving out to those areas. And new construction is going to happen out there. And you're going to see a lot of new construction in those areas. Also, another trend that kind of supports that I'm watching is this trend with commercial real estate, office buildings being vacant because people are working from home. And it occurs to me, if you are going to work from home, you don't necessarily need to live close to your job. You can live anywhere. So you could spend $400,000 in town on a 2-2 with, a tiny little lot, or you could spend $400,000 in Hall County on an acre with 2,200 square feet, right? So I wonder.
And be by Lake Lanier.
And be like by Lake Lanier and be in better school systems and all that stuff too. So I feel like the move towards virtual work might have a serious impact on in-town neighborhoods. And I'm kind of watching that as it develops.
Forsyth in particular blows my mind. I mean, the schools are great out there. There has been insane amounts of development. A lot of that is big cookie cutter homes in neighborhoods, which nothing wrong with those homes. They're very nice. But there's even like luxury farms is the best way I can describe them. There's one neighborhood out there, I think, called the Homesteads that's starting at $3.5 million. And so there is like money out there. When you talk about like where Alpharetta kind of bleeds into Cumming, kind of horse country, they have some really big lots, some really nice houses that are selling for $1 million and up. And there are a bunch of those.
Well, you talk about creative financing. Pace and a lot of his people buy horse-friendly properties subject to or owner financed because the rents that someone with horses will pay are much higher.
Yeah, that's a whole other economy. I actually met someone who his wife was really into, like, she basically flips horses.
Wow.
So she'll buy them and then like work on training them and getting them show ready. And I don't know the whole game, but basically she adds value to the horse, for lack of a better phrase, and then she'll turn around and sell them. There's a whole industry behind it.
Oh, that's awesome. I had no idea.
Very interesting.
Flip anything in this world, right?
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, the concept's very simple. Buy old, fix it up, sell it.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, this has been great. Let's go ahead and move to our final 4 questions.
Okay.
All right. Our final 4 questions. These are the same 4 questions we ask every guest to just learn a little bit more about you. Okay. Question number 1, what is your morning routine?
My morning routine is to go to the Cowart YMCA and swim 2,200 meters, come back to the house and meditate for 10 minutes and take a shower, get ready for work.
I love it. Why swimming?
I have a shoulder injury, right? Because I used to play tennis a lot and I love tennis. And I have a love of hiking. And my whole plan, my life plan, is when my kid goes to college to put my pack on my back and head back out there. So I want to preserve my knees, right? So I don't want to be jogging all the time because that, impacts your knees. But I also want to maintain my heart and my cardio because hiking is hard. It's really hard on you. So that's my idea, is to kind of keep my body in the kind of shape that it needs to be in for long distance backpacking.
Very cool.
Big dreams, man. Pacific Crest Trail, Inca Trail. What's that one in Spain? The Santiago Trail or whatever that is. Camino de Santiago. I mean, I'm going to buy my wife an RV. She can follow behind, meet me at town to town, but I'm going full vagabond, man, once my kid's in college.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Is the kid on board?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad, where do I stay? Where all your houses are rented out? Put a pack on, man. You're going to have to stay with me in the woods.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Second question is, what is your biggest goal for 2023?
The biggest goal that I have for 2023 is to get back into acquisitions and put together a handful of flips to sell in 2024. I'm very modest. I mean, our business has survived with 6 to 8 flips per year. I mean, we don't have to become, CT Homes or something like that. We have very modest goals as far as that is concerned. So just getting my acquisitions to where I can pull down those properties for Lena and her team to renovate. That's what I want to do.
Cool. Yeah. Love the focus. Yeah. Number 3, what is your favorite thing to do in Atlanta?
Oh man, my favorite thing to do in Atlanta is definitely float the hooch. Yeah, that's so much fun.
Always a good time.
Yeah.
And then last question is, if people want to get in touch with you, connect with you, possibly, send deals your way, work with you in some capacity, where can they find out more about you?
Well, like I said, I'm in the process of putting together some new marketing presence, you might say. Our website, lightboxhomes.com, is very much dedicated to our consumer clients right now, like our homeowners, but you can still go there and find contact info and reach out to me that way. You can also reach me, Stephen, Stephen, at lightboxhomes.com. And my acquisitions phone number is 770-674-8001.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Mike. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming. So many nuggets. I think it's cool to get to share these stories with people because there's a lot of people out there that are curious. They're curious about, who are these people that are flipping homes and building homes and these agents and lenders, and then a lot of people that want to do that too. And so if they can learn from someone like you that's been doing it a while and doing it at a very high level, what an amazing story to get to share.
Thank you very much. And I will say as a final piece, Lena and I would really like to put together a program to teach people how to self-manage renovations, because that's where we see most investors fall apart. I've seen people that are amazing at acquisitions that'll wholesale, 50 properties a year, and they totally choke on the renovation, right? And a lot of that is how you select contractors, your relationships with those people, how you select what to do with the house, the exit strategy for it, the layout changes, those sorts of things. So a big goal that we have for the next couple of years is to design a program to teach people how to manage renovations.
Very cool. So if anyone out there, if that is you, if you're trying to figure out how to manage a renovation, it's probably one of the hardest things in investing is finding contractors, managing contractors. Literally just doing that is hard. So the fact that you're offering to help people is very cool.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. That's it for today's episode. Thank you to everyone who made it this far and listened to the whole thing. If you did, I'm sure you got a ton of great information out of it. Again, Stephen is a true professional, a master of his craft. I've never met someone that's so nice and sharing with all of their knowledge, and someone who has so much knowledge to give. So thank you guys again for listening this far. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to. That helps us get this out there. We're still very early in this podcast journey. So again, thank you to our early supporters, people that are listening, liking, sharing. If you share it with a friend, that really supports us and we appreciate that. And lastly, if you are looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, feel free to get in touch with me. You can find me on Instagram or TikTok at RealMikeLacey, and you can email me MikeLacey@AtlantaFineHomes.com. Would be happy to connect and see if we can help you out. So thank you guys again and have an amazing week.